What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're going to be doing a camera comparison test between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro. Now, the point of this video is basically just to determine whether or not there's any real difference between these two phones when shooting pictures and videos, and if maybe it's worth it going with the more expensive iPhone 12 Pro. And just to give you the straight answer up front, no, there's not really much of a difference at all. Certainly not enough for most people to justify the price jump, so you should probably save the extra couple $100 and just go with the regular iPhone 12. With that being said, there are a couple of things that do make the 12 Pro a little better. It has an extra camera lens, for example, the Telephoto lens, which allows for some additional features, and a couple other little things. So if you're interested in more of a deep dive, let's go ahead and get right into it, and I'll go over everything you need to know. Starting with the selfie cameras, the iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro have the exact same front camera setup. There's absolutely no difference here in specs, capabilities, shooting modes, features, and I think that should be pretty obvious. In fact, the entire iPhone 12 lineup, from the Mini to the Pro Max, all have the exact same selfie camera. So no matter which phone you go with here, your selfies will look the same. And we can zoom in a bit and pick apart the detail or look at the color and exposure of the shot as a whole, but no matter how you want to look at it, the results are absolutely identical. And like I said, feature-wise, it's all the same too. So you're getting the new night mode selfie capabilities on both the 12 and 12 Pro. And once again, to me, the shots look identical. When we switch over to the rear camera setups, in general, I've found that probably 99% of the time, as long as the subject and shooting conditions remain the same, the iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro are going to produce identical looking pictures. And this totally makes sense. The main camera lens around back on these two phones, the one you use for everyday shots, it's the same hardware. 12 megapixel, f1.6 aperture, 26mm wide-angle lens. And the camera sensors, to the best of my knowledge, are also the same too. That doesn't change until you jump up to the 12 Pro Max. Taking a closer look at some samples here, you can see that in good lighting conditions, with the focus on the subject being about the same, the results are indistinguishable from one another. The exposure and white balance are the same, the color temperature is identical, and when we zoom in a bit, you can see detail-wise, neither phone has any real advantage. Now, if you get a little sloppy with your shooting like I did here, you will find a difference. The sky is totally blown out in this iPhone 12 picture, but that's just because of what it ended up focusing on and how it adjusted. It was different than the iPhone 12 Pro in this instance, and that was more just user input error than anything else. When you actually tap to focus on the same subject and all the rest of the shooting conditions are the same in the moment, you really can't tell these phones apart. And I think for a vast majority of people who simply pull their phone out of their pocket and snap a quick pic, this is probably the answer you're looking for. In everyday scenarios with simple shots, the 12 and 12 Pro produce identical results. Jumping over to the ultrawide lens on these two phones, again, what we have here is the same result in my opinion. Just like with the main lens, the secondary ultrawide camera on both phones is the exact same hardware. A 12 megapixel, f2.4 aperture, 120 degree ultrawide camera. And feature-wise and capability-wise, you get all the same stuff. You can use night mode with the ultrawide camera on both phones too, which is new this year. Now, speaking of night mode, this actually is where I thought the 12 Pro might finally have an advantage. And that's because the 12 Pro does have Apple's new LiDAR sensor. This is the first additional camera hardware feature not found on the iPhone 12. It's just on the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max. And while its main use cases more have to do probably with AR, it can also assist with low light and nighttime shooting to better interpret depth of field and improve focus accuracy and speed. With that being said, the difference you might experience is sort of going to be on a case-by-case basis. So for example, with just your average everyday nighttime shots using night mode, once again, I think you'll see that the results between the two phones are the same. Every once in a while, I did notice that the iPhone 12 Pro maybe retained a bit more color in certain situations. The sky maybe looks a little bluer, and it maybe canceled out some of the warm yellowish undertones that tend to happen in low light and nighttime shots. But that's about all I could come up with with, and it wasn't in every single scenario. The shots overall look the same, and even when we start to look closer at the dark areas and attempt to pick out the detail, I just don't really see any differences. And this is the same whether you're using the standard lens or the wide angle lens with night mode 2, like I talked about earlier. With the LiDAR sensor on the iPhone 12 Pro though, this does unlock the ability to shoot night mode shots in portrait mode, something the regular iPhone 12 can't do. So here's an example of the difference between a portrait shot with night mode on the 12 Pro and without night mode on the regular 12. And this to me is actually a pretty big difference. The lighting is just way better on the 12 Pro. There's significantly more detail for sure, and it's far and away the much better shot. This I think is actually a great addition to the 12 Pro, and while it's maybe not something you'd use every single day, it's certainly a great add-on to the camera capabilities as a whole. The other big camera hardware difference between these two phones is of course that third lens found on the iPhone 12 Pro, the telephoto lens. And with this, you do gain a couple of extra features. The first is significantly improved zoom capabilities. That's what this telephoto lens is after all. It's a zoom lens, and with this there's kind of two things to consider. First off, at up to 2 times zoom, the 12 Pro is going to be using an optical zoom, a hardware zoom, utilizing the telephoto lens itself to assist, while the regular iPhone 12 is using digital zoom. There's no real lens assistance. And even at this point, you can kind of tell that there is quite a bit more detail retained at 2 times zoom on the iPhone 12 Pro, and that should be pretty expected. Furthermore, the 12 Pro can also zoom in more just in general. It offers a 10 times total zoom, while the iPhone 12 stops at 5 times. So even at 5 times zoom, the 12 Pro still has some assistance with its zoom lens, and again, there's way more detail here in the result. At 10 times zoom, you can see we get way closer, obviously, with the 12 Pro, and honestly, it doesn't look too bad at all. Now, will you be zooming in 5 times or 10 times all that often? Likely not, but if there were but actual one real-world difference between the camera setups, this is pretty much it right here. Furthermore, the telephoto lens can also be used with portrait shots. Now, both phones, in my opinion, take the same portrait pictures with the main lens. Once again, I can't tell them apart. Everything from the detail on my face to the edge detection to the background and foreground separation, it all looks the same to me. But the 12 Pro can utilize that telephoto lens for a totally different looking portrait shot. And here, I do think the results with the 12 Pro are better when compared to the regular portrait picture on the iPhone 12. There's way more detail in my face, for example. Edge detection is a bit better, and while you may not always use this shooting mode, if maybe you do more professional photography, this is something you might find worth it. When it comes to video capabilities, there's kind of two sides to this as well. In general, again, everything to me looks the same, no matter the shooting conditions, whether it's broad daylight or even at night. And for most people, this is probably what you're looking for. There's no capability differences, there's no shooting mode differences. They both offer 4K up to 60 frames per second. Stabilization also seems to be the same. You're just not really going to find much of a difference. For professionals who want to utilize Apple's new Dolby Vision support, there is a difference here, and the 12 Pro is your answer. But unfortunately, I'm not a pro. I just can't offer any valuable insight with Dolby Vision, so you'll need to seek out a more in-depth professional review for that. But for everyday folks shooting regular old videos, it doesn't matter which phone you choose. The result is gonna be the same. So I have a handful more picture and video samples to show you guys. I'm just gonna let them play through now for a bit. Feel free to analyze and critique them, and I'll meet back up with you at the end of this video. All in all, I feel like I've said it a million times now, but between the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro for just about everyone, there's really going to be no difference in shooting. And if you're on the fence and want to save a little money, just go with a regular iPhone 12. You won't be missing out. If you want to get the telephoto lens, if you're a video professional and value a bump up in Dolby Vision HDR, or maybe you just really like nighttime portrait shots, I would say maybe it's worth considering. But there should also be other reasons beyond just the camera that are attracting you to the 12 Pro. But for everyday shooting, in my opinion, it's just not worth the extra cash. But what do you guys think? Do you feel like there's any reason to go with the 12 Pro? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later.